My name is Jake Patterson. I'm the Fire Chief of Clallam 2 Fire Rescue. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video so you can understand a little bit more about the fire district and the levy that we're proposing to the voters coming up at the August 4th primary. The first thing that many people may ask is, do I live in Fire District 2? Clallam County is divided into several different fire districts and the city of Port Angeles. So Fire District 2 surrounds the city of Port Angeles. On our eastern side, we're bordered about Deer Park, and then on our western side, the Lake Crescent, Lake Sutherland area. To the north, Strait of Juan de Fuca, and to the south, Olympic National Park. As you can see on our map here, the pink area represents we're Fire District 2, so if you live in that area, we respond, we're the primary response agency. To our west is Fire District 4, to our east is Fire District 3, and then the city of Port Angeles right in the center there. So if you live anywhere in that pink area, you're a customer of Fire District 2. A lot of people ask who Fire District 2 is. There's a lot of misconceptions out there about our affiliation. We are not any kind of division or department of the county. We're a standalone taxing entity approved by the voters back in 1944. So the revenue we receive is straight from our voters. We don't get state funding, we don't get county funding, we don't get federal funding unless it's in the form of a grant. So the majority of our revenue comes straight for the taxpayers that live within Fire District 2. The people of Fire District 2, we are a combination department. That means we utilize both volunteer firefighters and career firefighters to handle the emergencies as they come in and all our non-emergency functions. We are still predominantly volunteer. We have 80% of our responders are firefighters, EMTs, and paramedics are volunteer members. They respond from home when a call is needed. They do training on a weekly basis. And then we do have a small contingent of career staff. So myself, the fire chief, we have a deputy fire chief of operations, Justin Greider. We have an administrative supervisor, Heather Catuzzo, who manages all the administrative portions, finance, payroll, human resource aspects of the fire district. And then we do have 6 full-time firefighters and paramedics. They're divided equally between 3 shifts. So what that basically means is that every day we have 2 full-time responders on 24/7. That's kind of who makes up the fire district. Now we also have the facilities where we operate from. We do have administrative offices located in the city of Port Angeles, 1212 East 1st. It's an old bank building. This is where our headquarters administrative is at. So this is where you'll get burn permits and stuff. That's where the fire chief, the deputy chief, and the administrative personnel are at. We do have a fire station in the Gales Addition neighborhood, Fire Station 21 out on Baker Street. It's staffed 24/7 with 2 full-time firefighters. One's a firefighter paramedic, one's a firefighter EMT. It is our only station in the district that has 24-hour living quarters. Our next station that we have is at Power Plant Road. It covers the western portion, the Dry Creek area of our fire district. This is a volunteer staff station. They respond to the station as needed when the calls come in. We have a station up Black Diamond. It's also a volunteer staff station. It has an engine company and a brush truck in there. And then we also have another fire station out in the Deer Park area. Again, this is another volunteer staff station. When needed, the volunteers come in, respond there. Station 21, the one in Gales Addition, is, as I mentioned, the only one that has 24-hour living quarters right now. We do also have an inactive station out at Lake Sutherland, out at Shadow Mountain. This station is considered inactive because there wasn't enough volunteer support to be able to staff and feasibly respond from that station. So you may drive by it and see it there, but it's not an active station right now. Most of these facilities are 2 primary stations. The one in Gales Addition and one in the Dry Creek were first originally constructed in the 1960s. So that's where we respond from, and that's where we do our work from, but we also need the vehicles, the apparatus to respond to the emergency calls. We are a full-service fire agency, which means we provide fire, EMS, technical rescue, fire prevention, and wildland fire response. So the fire district owns 5 fire engines. The structural, they're called Type 1 pumpers. They're what you would typically think of as city pumpers. 2 of them were manufactured in 1997. We do have 2 that were also manufactured in 2007. As a cost-saving measure several years ago, we did purchase a used fire engine to augment our fleet, and it was originally constructed in 1991. We operate 3 ambulances. As I mentioned, we provide advanced life support and basic life support treatment and transport to Olympic Medical Center. So those 3 ambulances, we've been trying to do our due diligence to replace them, the older fleet. So we do actually have a 2019 ambulance, a 2017 ambulance, and then we have an ambulance that was manufactured in 1999. So we've been doing our due diligence as those ambulances get used quite a lot, as EMS usually makes up the primary bulk of our responses. Most of our fire district does not have a steady supply of water, so we typically have to bring the water to the fire scenes, and so we have 2 water tenders that carry 3,000 gallons of water each. They are stationed at the Deer Park Station and the Dry Creek Station. One was manufactured in 1993 and the other was manufactured in 1999. We also have a wildland program where we respond not only to wildland fires here locally but throughout the region and also throughout the state as requested when there's a statewide mobilization. We do have 3 wildland engines. We purchased one in 2017 and then we're fortunate enough to get a FEMA grant to purchase a second one. So we actually have 2 of our wildland engines are identical, purchased in 2017. And then we are also donated a surplus fire engine from Washington State Department of Natural Resources. So we have a 2001 DNR truck. I'm here today to talk about our proposed Fire Levy Lid Lift that we're putting on the ballot in August 4th, the primary election. So in 2014, which is the last time the voters approved a fire levy, they approved it at a rate of $1.07 per thousand of assessed value. It has since declined down, and this year in 2020 we're collecting 86 cents per thousand. How that works is we are limited by state statute to only collect basically the same amount we collected the year before. So as property values rise, we have to collect less per thousand in order to stay beneath that threshold of roughly the same amount each year. The downside is we're not able to keep up with inflation. So as the price of everything goes up, our money doesn't go quite as far. We're asking the voters this year for a levy lid lift. As I mentioned, the current rate is about 86 cents per thousand. We're asking the voters to consider a 50-cent raise up to $1.36. This will be less than the statutory maximum we can ask for. A fire district can ask up to $1.50, but a committee made up of fire commissioners, the public, union representatives, volunteer representatives, administrative staff came up with the best solution to make sure we got the most value and we didn't increase the burden excessively on the taxpayers. And so that was the amount that was decided needed to move forward. So the fire district does not have an EMS levy. In addition to the $1.50, we could ask the voters for an additional 50 cents to fund our EMS program. And even though we have a robust EMS program, as I mentioned, providing ALS and BLS transport to the hospital, we currently do not have an EMS levy. The fire levy is our only source of tax-funded levies. And again, we're not asking for the maximum amount we could, we're only asking for what we've determined is necessary. The fire levy is our only consistent source of funding. As I mentioned before we don't get funding from the county on a regular basis, we don't get funding from the state, we don't get federal funding unless it's in the form of grants. The problem with this is grants are not guaranteed, and in times they're very difficult to get. They're very competitive. Usually fire departments across the country are applying for these grants. Several years ago, the state of Washington did pass the 1% limitation. So each year, as we move from our budget year to the next budget year, we're only able to collect 1% more than we did the year before. As many of you are aware, as house prices rise and the cost of living goes up usually by 2 to 3% a year, we don't get to keep up with inflation. So that dollar amount decreases, our spending power decreases, so our amount per thousand decreases each year. The fire district is good stewards of the tax dollars. We've had a clean audit from the Washington State Auditor's Office. We've had no issues recently, and there's no problems. They've no findings like that. In order to make your tax dollars go further, we use a combination of volunteer and career staff, which helps augment the response so that they're there when you need them. And we're very aggressive in applying for local, state, and federal grants. As a matter of fact, since 2002, the Fire District has been able to receive about $1.5 million in grants for equipment, apparatus, and our volunteer programs. Again, that may seem like a lot, but it's not consistent and it's very competitive. So we were pretty fortunate to get that money, but it won't be able to sustain us and we can't plan operationally for the future. You may ask why the cost of the district keeps going up. That's because we keep responding to more and more calls. The Fire District in 2013 started a advanced life support program where we started hiring paramedics, and our calls keep increasing. In the last 10 years, the Fire District has seen an 83% increase in the call volumes. The vast majority of those are medical in nature. 76% of our total call volume are medical emergencies. The rest are fire and other types of hazards. The demand on our services is growing. Not only does that put more stress on the people that work here, but on our vehicles and equipment and the amount of volume and availability of our on-duty crews. The aging population is becoming an issue where more and more people are using the 911 system to access healthcare, so that generates more and more ambulance calls for us. The opioid epidemic, which people have seen all through the nation, does impact Clallam County, and we are impacted with it too here as well. As I mentioned, there's more wear and tear on our equipment, which causes it to need to be replaced sooner. Not only does that wear and tear on our vehicles exist and the wear and tear on our people, more and more call volume means that we have more and more overlapping calls. 33% of the time when we receive an emergency 911 call, we already have an emergency call in progress. So what that means is crews are out of position, possibly on one side of the district, and they need to respond on the other side of the district. On the eastern portion of our district, our average response time is 8.1 minutes. This is largely due to the fact that our career staff are housed on the east side of the district. The way our district is shaped is unfortunate that the city of Port Angeles is right in the center of the district. So if we have a call on the west side, our career staff has to transit through the city of Port Angeles to the west side. This can create longer response times as we get out there, as volunteers respond to the station and need to pick up apparatus. So the average response time on the west side of the district is 16.2 minutes, so pretty much twice as long as it takes to get on the west side of the district than it does on the east side of the district. Our equipment is aging. As I mentioned before, as we went through the slideshow with the pictures before, we have 2 pumpers, fire engines that are 13 years old. We have 2 more that are 23 years old, and we have our 5th pumper, which is 29 years old. Both our water tenders are over 20 years old. One is 21 years old, one is 27 years old. We have made a concerted effort to replace our ambulances, so we do have 2 relatively new ambulances, and we do have 1 ambulance that's still 21 years old. Our wildland engines, as mentioned, we purchased one, received one on a grant, so we have 2 of them that are relatively young, 3 years old, and then we have an older one that was surplus use from DNR. The problem that we're facing is how do we replace those fire engines that are aging? Typically in the fire service we look at the 20-year replacement time frame because of the advents in technologies, the wear on the equipment, the driving back and forth which causes it. Even though they're well maintained, sometimes the parts become obsolete the longer you have them. The problem is that our total annual revenue from taxes and ambulance transports and fees usually equals $1.6 million. A new fire engine and a new water tender cost anywhere between $400,000 on the low end to $600,000 on the high end. So even if we were to try to purchase one of those vehicles a year, that would be over 1/3 of our annual revenue, which we're not able to sustain. A new ambulance typically costs about $165,000 to $200,000, so those are smaller items that we are able to budget for, but even at our current budget level, we still have to take several years of saving money in order to purchase those ambulances. Our wildland engines, while we still have 2 2017 brush trucks, their replacement is about $140,000 to $150,000. So that gives you a good layout of what the district has, where we operate from, and who operates it. Now the big question is going to be, why are we going for this fire levy? We've been noticing that our response times have been growing. There's been an increase in overlapping calls. So we've run into issues where even though we have staff on the east side of the district, they go to the west side of the district, and then the next subsequent call is on the east side of the district. So the intent is to benefit both sides of the fire district. With this funding from this levy, we intend to initially hire 2 full-time firefighters, one a firefighter EMT and one a firefighter paramedic, to begin staffing the west side of the district during our peak demand times. And what that means is that 51% of our call volume, so roughly over half of our call volume, happens within a 9-hour period during the day. So we're going to target that area to help reduce the response times on the west side and to keep the east side units in their primary response district. The other part of the funding for this levy will go towards apparatus and equipment replacement. Not only do we have several large fire engines and water tenders that need to be replaced, we also have aging equipment, cardiac monitors. We recently had to replace a SCBA compressor that had a critical failure, and all of these items come with a price tag. New gurneys cost anywhere between $20,000 to $25,000. New cardiac monitors are about $20,000 to $25,000, and our SCBA compressor, which we had to recently buy, was about $50,000. So we have aging equipment. While it's been properly maintained, it does have a useful service life, and so while we have a maintenance program, we unfortunately sometimes run into problems where they become so old and obsolete we're not able to replace them. A good example is one of our cardiac monitors. We've done our due diligence to maintain it, make sure it's operating proficiently, but it is so long out of its manufacture date that the manufacturer first stopped producing it, then they stopped producing the parts for it, and now they're not even going to start servicing it. So we're not even actually able to get the annual maintenance done on one of them, so we'll have to replace those soon. A big question, which I'm sure everybody has, is what's this going to cost the taxpayers in the district? As mentioned, we're looking at a 50-cent increase up to $1.36 total. So that increase for a $200,000 home is going to be about $8.33 a month, or $100 a year. A $250,000 home, we're looking at $10.42 a month and $125 a year. For a $300,000 home, it's about $14.58 a month, or $175 a year. Those will be the increases if the levy passes. This levy is part of our long-term planning. We are trying to figure out how the district can best be suited to handle the emergencies and the services to the citizens for the next 40 to 50 years, and this is one of those first steps. We need to start addressing staffing and response times as well as aging equipment. But then the fire district is in the process of developing a facilities plan to look at, are the facilities going to suit our needs for the foreseeable future. On behalf of myself and all the members at Clallam 2 Fire Rescue, we'd like to thank you for the opportunity to serve you. Our fire district, we have 9,700 citizens that live within the district. It covers 85 square miles, which is a large district. A combination, we have a good working relationship between all our volunteer career staff members and our neighboring agencies. And on average, the fire district responds to close to 1,700 calls for emergencies a year. So that volume keeps increasing every year. If you have any further questions about this or the levy, feel free to reach out to me. I'm Fire Chief Jake Patterson. Our phone number is 360-457-2550. You can email me at jpatterson@clallamfire2.org. And then feel free to stop by or email me, and I'll be happy to answer any further questions.